Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you for this live session where we're joined by RiskRecon founder Kelly White and Whistic CEO Nick Sorensen for this webinar on modernizing third-party risk management with RiskRecon Assessments powered by Whistic. We're thrilled for all of you to take some time out to be with us today. During this session, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A window in the Zoom bar. We'll answer your questions as timely as we can, and we'll be sure to leave a few minutes at the end to get to any questions. With that, we'll get things started because we've got a lot of great information to share with you today. So Kelly, feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Nate. Good morning. It's great to be here with Nick and with all of you. There's quite a lot of excitement and exciting things going on here in Mastercard in our third-party risk and supply chain risk management commercial practice. You've probably read in the news about a major pending acquisition that's going to have, boy, there's going to be a lot to talk about that when we finally get that across the line for approval with regulators. But we're not just waiting on acquisitions. We have a number of exciting partners and partnerships. We're really pleased to share the stage today with Nick over from Whistic. They've done some really cool things, and RiskRecon's taken the step to do some really cool integration with Whistic, and not only technically but also in go-to-market, where the Whistic software is available for purchase through the Mastercard and RiskRecon sales execs. So what we're going to be talking about today, as the title slide said, was modernizing third-party risk management. And there's two major things that have been coming together in the world. One, global scale intelligence. We're going to talk about that and how that can benefit your third-party risk management program. And we're also going to talk about automation. And automation's not new, but the AI dimension of it, I think, is. And Nick and his team have brought together some amazing capabilities to bring AI into really dramatically streamlining the third-party risk management process. So that's our agenda today. There's definitely a ton of territory we can cover today, but we're going to have to stay on target to really get you a sample of what we're doing with the AI and maybe a refresher on what we're doing in the intelligence side and how those come together to transform your program. Okay, with that, let's just kind of lay a common framework here. I think if we all sat around the table as third-party risk and cyber professionals, we could agree that maintaining the safety and soundness of the supply chain within the bounds of the organization's risk appetite, that's a pretty good objective. Now, in order to do that, there's a number of questions that necessitates that you have to answer. And here's just an example of those. Will this new supplier protect my risk interests? Are my existing suppliers protecting my interests today? If I could only engage one supplier today, which one would it be and why? Has my supply chain been compromised today? Has it been compromised this afternoon? The world moves that fast. And speaking of moving fast, you wake up, you read the record.media or some other news source and oh, geez, there's a new vulnerability that's being rapidly exploited across the internet. And, latest might be the PAN-OS auth bypass. We've seen MOVA, we've seen Snowflake. How do these affect, my risk interests? And what do I do about it? So in talking about this, Nick and I kind of boiled down to essential core practices, this framework of what a third-party risk management program capability set would look like and how they relate for addressing these questions and achieving that objective of protecting your organization's risk interests in the supply chain. Nick, do you want to talk just right down the center there about what we've got?
Yeah, happy to, Kelly. Hey, everybody. Great to be here with you. I think the traditional kind of workflow of an assessment, process flowing through third-party risk management begins with assessing inherent risk. You triage your portfolio. You're conducting assessments. It's largely, Kelly, from a legacy perspective, a questionnaire exercise. Most companies think about this in terms of, I'm going to send you a questionnaire. I'm going to wait for you to fill it out. I'm going to get it back. I'm going to review that information. The vast majority of your time and resources are spent on administering things like the questionnaire and reviewing documentation. We're, of course, today going to talk about a more modern way to do that, but that's sort of historically what that middle lane has been constructed by.
Yeah. And when you look at those outer sides, monitor performance, detect incidents, triage critical exposures, hunt for dangerous conditions. These are proactive things that go beyond your traditional core and require some good intelligence, some good current intelligence, some actionable intelligence, some accurate intelligence. So let's jump to the next slide there. Nick referred to this, in the traditional third-party risk management program. He used the word administration or administrivia. I think it's that administration that gets in the way and takes time from acting on risk. And that's what the power of intelligence and automation enables, is spending less time on administrative work, administering questionnaires, gathering those, correlating information, and so on, and more time acting on risk. And that's what we're here to talk about and show to you that you can get to with intelligence and automation. So let's look at this framework again. And, there's some barriers here, right? And Nick, why don't you talk about just some of the barriers that we've got it in yellow in a few of these areas, but just kind of talk about some of the things that drag down, expand a little bit on that administrative thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, one example, we're seeing more and more third-party vendors push back on responding to questionnaires altogether. There's a growing trend around, I'm going to publish my documentation in a trust center, and I want you to go through it. You do your thing, and I've got my thing, right? So there's some friction. I haven't talked to a business that doesn't want to move faster. So the pace of business is picking up. Business sponsors want to purchase tools. They want to engage service providers. They don't want to wait for assessments. You got to engage. You got to go back and forth. You got to exchange documentation. NDAs need to be signed. There's just a lot of friction and back and forth in that process for sure.
Yeah, so it's doable, but you can see if you kind of reference back in your mind that graph we put with administration work on the y-axis and risk action on the x-axis. You're really up there spending most of your time on the administrative. And then when you look at these intelligence, these questions about, hey, what's the state of my supply chain today? Am I exposed to this critical vulnerability? Has there been a breach? Some of that you can do, like detect incidents through a lot of manual sorting and maybe counting on your suppliers to notify you without having a really good kind of commercial grade intelligence capability. But it becomes very difficult. And things like hunting for dangerous conditions, like, hey, what's my exposure to PAN-OS across your supply chain? Impossible without having a good intelligence feed. So let's jump to the next here, Nick. What we're going to be focused on here again, and we've talked about a little bit, automation, AI-driven assessments, robust automation workflow, and trust exchange. I mean, Whistic brings that to the table in partnership with RiskRecon. And on the intelligence side, RiskRecon's deep into the cybersecurity ratings and insights that bring those intelligence capabilities that you can custom tune to match your risk appetite. For cybersecurity, been doing that since 2015, and we'll talk about it more in the future, but in January, we're bringing out a privacy monitoring solution as well. And that comes in the forms of summary ratings and insights to make it really quickly actionable, so you can just survey the landscape and dive in where you want. Detailed findings and recommendations. And again, you can also tune the whole system to match your risk appetite. So when you apply these things, then you really can go from that, at best, this kind of yellow state where you're spending a lot of time in administration and get these capabilities in place and spend a lot more time, the vast majority of your time, on acting on risk.
All right, Kelly. Well, thank you for the context and backdrop there. And I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about the main title of our webinar, which is the AI capabilities that Kelly introduced that we're really excited about offering through RiskRecon Assessments powered by Whistic. My guess is that it's no surprise to any of us on the call today that the most important current trend in our industry is AI. It's also not surprising that we probably hear a lot of hype around this. There's a lot of buzz. Is it just a buzzword? So we want to demystify that a little bit, give you a little bit of context before we jump into the product and do a demo of this. And one of the things I want to highlight here is the importance of a foundation upon which the AI capabilities can be built. So when we talk about transitioning from a legacy questionnaire-based, approach to a more modern AI-first approach to third-party risk management, we're not saying that you don't need the workflow and system of record. That's still a critically important part about what we're doing. And we have that capability in RiskRecon Assessments. It's tightly coupled with the continuous risk monitoring powered by RiskRecon, of course. And as Kelly mentioned, it's coupled with the dual-sided exchange, what we call Trust Catalog, where thousands of third-party vendors have proactively published their documentation, their questionnaires, so that you don't have to request that of them. And so this is the foundation upon which we build AI, in which the market-leading innovation that we're going to talk about today can really have an impact. Without this foundation, though, it really is just an afterthought. It's an enhancement. It's a shiny tool. So we spent the last several years building this AI-first third-party risk management capability. And we're not going to cover the entire workflow on the call today. So this is a slide to show you what we're not going to cover. But you do need to be aware that as you talk to your RiskRecon representative, they can tell you about the robust workflow we have all the way from intake and triage to assessment and issue management remediation. We're really going to focus on number 4 today. So how does AI accelerate assessments? And when we talk about AI, the context through which we have built this is we want to make a difference in the day-to-day life of the user. So how do we reduce friction between customers and vendors? How do we automate manual or redundant steps? How do we ultimately reduce the need for you to answer, review, send lengthy questionnaires? That's really the legacy mindset that we're trying to get away from. And so you're going to see AI serve a co-pilot role in the demo today. You're going to stay in the driver's seat while we handle the heavy lifting. In order to do that, AI cannot be a black box. You've got to be able to trust the outcomes. And we believe heavily in table stakes capabilities that deliver transparency around this. These 6 key capabilities in the boxes on this screen, we're going to highlight in the product today. So whenever you see an AI-generated response, you're going to also see a confidence score. You're going to get an answer explanation. You're going to see visibility into the sources. You're going to have a scoring on those sources, and you're going to be able to put your own eyes on the text and the documentation used by AI to deliver the response in the platform. So we're going to highlight that. And there's 5 key capabilities that we're going to review today in the RiskRecon Assessments AI suite. So Vendor Smart Search, the ability to ask a question of a vendor's documentation and get a response. Vendor Insights is the ability to do that in a federated manner across all of your portfolio. That could be hundreds or thousands of documents that you're sifting through using AI. We'll show you how you should never read a SOC 2 audit report again with our SOC 2 summary capability. And then ultimately, how do you assess any vendor documentation against your framework of choice using vendor summary capabilities? We'll also show you how you can accelerate the time it takes your vendors to respond to questionnaires if you send those through the platform using the vendor smart response capabilities. So with that brief introduction, we're going to jump into the platform here. And just by way of orientation, we've got a fictitious company, Lion. It's going to be our demo company today. You can see the navigation along the left-hand side. I'm currently in the vendor catalog. This is showing my portfolio of third parties. You can see the RiskRecon rating right here, front and center in here. And for the purposes of the demo today, we're going to use Whistic as our vendor. So I'm going to click into the vendor record for Whistic. Again, you can see front and center up here, the RiskRecon ratings data, as well as an overview of the vendor that I'm going to use for the demo purposes. So where I'd like to start is we've got a document repository populated with documentation on this vendor. Now, I could have uploaded this myself. I could have gathered this through the Whistic Trust catalog. Maybe they already had a profile there that they could share with me. Maybe the vendor emailed me this. Maybe I requested a questionnaire through the platform. There's a number of different ways I could have gotten the documentation into the repository. But if I've got a SOC 2 audit report, I can click this Summarize SOC 2 button. And instead of reading through dozens or hundreds of pages of SOC 2 audit report, I select the document and I can click to create the summary. I actually did this morning before the webinar. It took 1 minute and 42 seconds. So let me show you the document that was produced as a result of this. So I've taken the unstructured data from a SOC 2 audit report and I've turned it into structured data. And this is consistent across all the SOC 2 summaries I could run across my hundreds or thousands of vendors in the platform. We work closely with customers to develop this capability. What's the information you most want to see in a SOC 2 audit report? You can see that summarized here at the top. Time period, trust service criteria, auditor opinion, overview of the company. Right front and center are any exceptions. In this sample report, you can see there's some exceptions noted with the management responses. Those are getting served up. I've got the CUECs and CSOCs, all the way down to what controls were tested and the results of the control testing in the audit. So again, I've taken unstructured data, I've turned it into an artifact that I can now deliver as evidence as a part of my assessment, and I've gained risk insights out of this. I love a comment from one of our customers that recently tested this out and started using it for the first time. They said, we ran 3 SOC 2 summaries in a couple of minutes. I shared them with my CISO. The word that they used was flabbergasted. They then shared it with the internal audit team, who was very excited to have a structured artifact to use for internal audit purposes. And importantly, I can take this data, and if I click into the Whistic reporting suite now, I have an object called SOC 2 summaries that I can report on across my vendors now. You can see SOC 2 summaries by audit issue date, but I could, run a report on my auditors, the opinions, exceptions found, et cetera, in the platform as well. So again, taking unstructured data and turning it into structured data. So that's our first capability that we wanted to demonstrate today. Now, for the second capability, what if you have more than just a SOC 2 audit report and you want to summarize that documentation and assess that using AI? Now, that's our vendor summary capability. Now, there's a number of different use cases you could use for this. I've heard a bunch from customers, and we developed it in concert with a number of different use cases. One of them is certainly the vendor won't respond to my questionnaire, but they've provided me with a trust center or some documentation. Another is I have a fast track program. I offer vendors, you can fill out my full questionnaire, or you can provide a list of these documents and we can assess those. Whatever your use case is, you would come in here once you have that documentation in the platform and you'd click to generate a new AI vendor summary. And what we're essentially going to be presented with is the ability to select a framework to assess against. So AI is going to take the documentation I have, and you can see here I've got a list of different frameworks that I can use. I could select a custom framework. Here's the custom questionnaire or Whistic vendor summary. We support over 50 standardized industry frameworks that you could leverage. I'm going to use the CAIQ, the CAKE by Cloud Security Alliance. I'm going to do that because it's very robust. There's over 260 questions in this. So we're going to do this on the fly here. So what AI is going to do is it's going to assess against the framework, the documentation I have. And again, I don't have to send this questionnaire to the vendor at this point. I'm simply taking the documentation I have in the document repository and assessing that against the CAKE using AI. And you can see it's already started to populate the screen here. We're doing this live on this webinar. You can see the compliance is up to 5% now. So let me orient you a little bit on what we're seeing here. I can see the framework, the created date for this AI summary. It's going to show this compliance. And again, this will continue to tick up. As it finds questions that it cannot respond to, this will populate. This unknown will start ticking up as well. And on the right-hand side, you can see it's giving me a visual cue at what is compliant, what's not compliant, what needs review, what's not applicable as well. But like we said in the slides just a minute ago, I need to be able to trust the outcomes. And in order to have trust, I need to have transparency into what AI is doing. So let's drill into one of these sections and see what information we can have available to us. So what I want to look at here briefly is the specific controls and questions that are generated as a result of this. So if I click into here, I can see all of the questions, the type of questions, the compliance, the confidence level that AI has in those questions, and I can drill into any section that I want as well. So in this application interface security, let's click into a specific control here. You can see the answer is yes, and I've got an AI generated response coupled with a confidence rating. Now, whenever you see a confidence rating, this is dynamically generated by AI. It's relevant to the question at hand. So it gives you information as to why AI is confident in this response. I can also see the answer explanation. And in this specific one, the sources indicate that the policy procedures are reviewed on an annual basis. Specifically, it's saying the SOC 2 Type 2 audit report is pulling information that gives me the relevant source. So now I can scroll down and see the relevant sources used by AI and other relevant sources. Again, I need the ability to have visibility into the sources that AI is using. And if I wanted to drill into the sources, I have the ability to do that as I click into the documentation. And what it's doing is it's taking me to the exact page in the SOC 2 Type 2 audit report and highlighting the text that AI leveraged to deliver this response. So again, I don't have to sift through 77 pages in this document, taking me right there. I can put eyes on it. That's an example of AI, serving as my co-pilot. So let's go back up here where now it looks at 51% completed with the review. Let's click into another section here. You can see I've got a non-compliant response. So we can open this up. In this example, AI was highly confident this was not compliant with the CIQ. Here's the explanation. Again, I've got relevant sources. I can see the sources used by AI, and I can drill into those as well. So very consistent theme across all of the capabilities here.
Hey, Nick, giving you a little bit more time here, but we just kind of walk through that just a little bit more slowly and talk through it a little bit more. What the question was, what the AI conclusion was, and what it summarized about that. I think it would be interesting for folks to see that at a little bit slower pace and take the time you need.
Yeah, sure. So let me go back to my filter here, unfilter on compliant. Okay, so if we click into a specific, here's the question. Are application security policies, procedures established, documented, communicated, applied, evaluated? So here's my question. The answer that was given is here. Now, as the reviewer, the assessor, I could override this depending on what evidence I found. I could change the compliance. I could flag this. I could even go create an issue in issue management directly from this as well. So this is an example of how an AI first mindset to this, the workflow is built around the AI capabilities. It's not sort of an add-on. They're seamlessly interwoven. We won't go into the issue management, but if I click to create the issue here, I could show you just briefly. It'll actually do that automatically on the fly. And now I'm in the issue management suite with that issue that I could, remediate and assign, et cetera. So Kelly, to your point down here, here's the answer that was delivered to this question up here. Are the policies documented, approved, and reviewed? And here's the smart search answer in this one. This is different than the one we just previously reviewed. So our company has a comprehensive application security program that's regularly reviewed. Again, here's the confidence. So why did AI answer this way? Sources indicate this. It looks like some self-assessment questionnaires were used. It looks like the summary actually just fully completed up there. We just got notified. So some self-assessment questionnaires were used, and I can find those that were leveraged down here for this example. So you'll see, again, the answer generation and similar on all of these questions. Answers generated based on the content it's finding, the sources. It'll give you the example of the sources as well. And let's pick one, Kelly. I think this would be helpful to your question or to your comment. Let's pick one where AI doesn't know. So we're not saying there's 100% accuracy and this is always going to have an answer. If there's not documentation there, it's not going to know. AI is not generating something it doesn't understand. So here's an example. Maybe click into this one where it says unknown. right? The sources do not contain information about whether this policy, covers special interest groups or other relevant entities. It talks about these topics, but doesn't mention anything about engagement with external groups or entities. So again, if I wanted to drill into the sources, I got that ability to do that, view and download the documentation. Now, one example of what you would do in this case that a lot of our customers are excited about is, okay, I've got a bunch of unknowns. I can bulk select these unknowns, and I can say, I need to know an answer to these. So I can come up here and say, I want to send these unknown questions to the vendor. So I've essentially generating a dynamic questionnaire on the fly here. And instead of asking 261 questions of them, I've got 11 selected, and maybe I'm like, no, this one doesn't matter. And so now I've got 9 questions. I've generated a dynamic questionnaire through the platform. The workflow will go gather that information, and then I could come back. Let me cancel this. I could come back in and I could retry the unknowns after they've responded, right? So built right into the workflow, the ability to sort of do that iterative approach that happens in assessments today, but it's very manual. I'm sending an email or I'm trying to get the vendor on the phone and I need this information. We can automate and streamline a lot of that using the AI capabilities today. So that's an example to Kelly's point of a little bit more detail behind the vendor summary capability. So we've looked at SOC 2 summary, we've looked at vendor summary, summarizing using AI. One of the things that customers are talking about this is the efficiency that it drives. I'm thinking of a couple of business cases that I've been made aware of recently, one of which they presented an 88% reduction in the turnaround time it will take to conduct assessments. Another one, 10 to 15 hours per assessment, down to 2 to 3 hours was their business case. Another customer who's been using this regularly talked about the ability to take a process that would take them a week at minimum. They had a person assigned if a vendor did not complete a questionnaire to take that documentation and map it against their framework. Now with vendor summary, they said that took a week down to 5 minutes. So really talking about day-to-day impact in the life of the user. So those are the first 2 capabilities. Let's keep going here. So you can see there's a question bar here. This is our vendor smart search. So what if I have a specific question that I want to get answered by the vendor's documentation? Maybe I've got something I need to follow up on. I know it mentioned it somewhere. There's a bunch of documents. I don't want to have to go sift through this. This could take hours, for me to go have to sift through this information. So I have the ability to answer, live on the fly or ask questions live on the fly and get answers. You can see it just generated that via AI. So a high confidence response came back. This is how data is encrypted. Here's the answer explanation, and here's the relevant sources. Again, I have the ability to see what was used by AI. I can click directly into the policy to say, where did this answer come from? Here's where AI is pulling that. So very powerful, robust capability to get answers to questions. So you can see it's saving my responses too. So if I've asked a question before, I can use this example, how quickly do you respond to high-risk vulnerabilities, sort of saving information and intelligence that I've used previously to ask that again. And those 6 capabilities, so the AI-generated response, the confidence level, the answer explanation, the sources are consistent across all of this. Again, I've got the vulnerability management policy. I can click into that document as well. So that's the vendor smart search capability. I'm asking a specific question on a vendor. I can do that across my whole portfolio as well. So if I come back into this vendor catalog where I see the whole portfolio, I could, based on RiskRecon information and reconnaissance, Kelly talked about, hunting for dangerous conditions or incident response. Maybe there's a 0-day. I need to get information from a population of my vendors. So I could come in and filter that down here in Whistic. We're also going to build tighter integration with RiskRecon on this in the future, but I select a filter. I bulk select that list of vendors, and now I have bulk actions available to me. So one of those actions could be a bulk questionnaire request. So again, I may want to send a mass questionnaire request out. An incident is a good example of that. And you can see CrowdStrike, Fortinet, Juniper, Kaseya, Log4j. We actually publish industry response templates. Typically when that CVE and the incident hits a certain level of exposure, in the industry. 24 to 48 hours after that, we'll have a template. We have a team dedicated to that. You can leverage that template for this bulk incident response. And then as you need to search through additional control and documentation, you can use what we call vendor insights. This is essentially asking a question across all of the vendors in my selection. This could be hundreds or thousands of documents. It saves our previously asked questions. So let me click on one that I've asked previously. Is TLS with 256-bit encryption used? I can see in a single pane of glass all the question answers across my vendors and the confidence level. And you can see here, I've got some low confidence. Again, the workflow is built into this. So maybe I go select the low confidence, and right from this, pane, I can ask a different question, try to get some additional insight. I can do maybe I want to request a custom questionnaire that I've created specific to this. I can do that right from here. I can also drill into the details. So, Watson X is a low confidence answer. Why is that? What's going on here? I need to understand a little bit more about that. It's saying that the encryption is used, but why is it low confidence? The sources indicate that libraries are used, including TLS and AES, but they do not explicitly state 1.2 and 256. So some inference is necessary. So now I need to go put my eyes on those sources myself. So again, powerful capability to accelerate your ability to search and deliver insights. Now let me shift gears and go to the questionnaires tab here for our last capability, which is how do I accelerate things for my vendors? So we support, again, 50 plus industry standard frameworks, including incident templates as well. You can see we have licenses, master licenses to all of these. So as a customer of RiskRecon Assessments powered by Whistic, you would get licenses to these, including SIG from shared assessments that you typically have to pay separately for. But when you send a questionnaire request through the platform, we haven't covered that capability today. But when you do that, the third-party vendor will land on a screen just like this. So we make it very easy for them to go through your questionnaire and respond to that. Attach file documentation, add collaborators, pick their teammates and set due dates, etc. One of the things we wanted to talk about is the ability that we expose AI capabilities to your third-party vendor. So I'm going to try Smart Response. And if the vendor already has information in Whistic, which they might, over 50,000 companies already have an account in the platform. They may have responded to a questionnaire previously and have documentation in here, or they can easily upload it. Maybe they've got a completed SIG and they're getting asked your questionnaire. They want to use that to help them accelerate their responses. They can come in here and pick some preferences. I want it to answer high and medium confidence. And they can leverage the AI capabilities as well. We know that your ability to turn around assessments is largely dependent on the vendor's response time as well. So what they have the capability to do is leverage AI to do the same thing that we just demonstrated on the assessor side of things. So you can see it's going through live now and it's responding to this questionnaire. And you can see I've got a smart response. I've got a generated answer. I've got confidence level. I've got sources and an answer explanation over here. Slightly different user interface. Here's my sources. Maybe I say this document is very relevant. I'm going to attach this as evidence to this question, and now it's attached. So again, powerful AI capabilities on both sides of the platform to help accelerate assessments for you and your third-party vendors. So last thing I'll just say here is we're really focused on the impact that this has on the day-to-day user. We haven't covered all of the capabilities that we have, but as you engage with your RiskRecon representative, they'd be happy to walk you through these capabilities in more detail. So with that, Kelly, I think that's what we wanted to show from a demo perspective. I'm going to pass it back to you now to talk through cybersecurity ratings capabilities. So back.
Yeah, and before we get into that, and Nick, I appreciate that. It takes some courage to do a live system demo, particularly one where there's so much compute dependent on what's happening. So nice work. Now, there's a couple things I want to talk about. One, you used, Nick used his own company for the assessment, and that makes sense. You don't want to show other people's artifacts or whatever, but I'll tell you, it's not the case that Nick structured his evidence in a certain way. These are not regular expressions or traditional kind of keyword mappings that you might see in other things. It works across broad sets of evidence bodies. and also with custom questionnaires, right, Nick? It's
Yes.
that's a capability where you can. Is that correct? That you can create your own questionnaire in there, and that the AI will work with that just as
Yes.
it
Yep.
does with one of
Yeah,
the
it's a great
50.
point. Yeah. Somebody might think this looks too good to be true. So we were just on site with one of the 20 most valuable companies in the world. They said the same thing before we buy and become a customer of this RiskRecon Assessments capability powered by Whistic. We want to see it for ourselves. We spent 3 days on site with their team, 10 of their team banging against it, running their custom questionnaires. They brought their own documentation. I'm excited to say they're gonna be one of our newest customers here in the next few weeks. So this capability is as advertised, and we're happy and excited for you all to get exposed to it and test it. It's not perfect, and we don't intend it to be. But the way that we described it and the way we've designed it is so that it delivers the insight and the transparency that you need in order to make decisions. Because you're the assessor, right? You're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and as we were evaluating this partnership and going to this distance, we certainly engaged and worked with our Mastercard's own third-party risk management team in vetting these, and there's a lot of excitement about this capability. So yeah, nice work. One of the other things is, and as we look at this diagram, it kind of relates to our roadmap. Nick, we should probably have arrows pointing from the intelligence straight into the conduct assessment, because on the roadmap, I think, is the ability to take in
Yes.
the cybersecurity ratings data into the AI model and factor that in. How do you contemplate that kind of coming together?
Well, we're really excited about that, and that's going to come early next year. Actually, we're not too far away from that. So remember when I was demoing the sources that were used to help AI infer compliance with the control, imagine one of those sources was the RiskRecon data. And so the ability to leverage RiskRecon's robust intelligence as a source for AI to use to measure compliance, that's coming, and we're not too far off from that. So that's something we're very excited about. I think a lot of the customers we've talked to about that are very excited too, because even without any documentation from the third-party vendor, you've got information from RiskRecon that can be used to determine compliance with these controls, and it's evidence-based, right? It's not a self-assessment, so it's of a higher quality as well. That's an example of what we're doing with that.
Yeah, so when we look at this diagram, what we're talking about here, in traditional third-party risk management, it's very much about what you say you do, or maybe an auditor that conducted a SOC 2 certification 18 months ago or something that says you do, which is great. That's powerful. And this AI, these capabilities that Nick's talking about, they're able to say, hey, these are the things that the company has said they do through their policies, through their procedures, maybe what others have attested and audited them against to say that they do. And it makes it easy to map that out to whatever control framework that you're using, and then to draw conclusions around that. Now, when you get into the other component of there's what you say you do and then what you actually do, that's the realm of where RiskRecon operates with its global scale intelligence and a ratings capability. So, Nick, I'm just going back to the question that you actually pulled up in the demo, which was around, hey, do you use a minimum of TLS 1.2 for all of your encryption? RiskRecon actually can bring forward, and your policies might say that, and maybe there was an audit from some time ago that says that. You pull in the RiskRecon data, and it can, RiskRecon data will bring out, hey, here's all the systems, and here's the ones that use TLS 1.2, and oh, here's a bunch that are using SSL 3 or TLS 1.1x or something like that.
Yeah.
And so then you can really mash together in an automated fashion and get rapid visibility against your control framework. Like, hey, this is what they say they do. This is what they actually do. The happy state is like, yeah, they both support each other. We've got strong evidence here. And you can see how doing this, just mentally go back to that graph that we showed, where on the y-axis we had administrative time, and on the x-axis we had action time. You can see how this moves you down and to the right, less administration, more action. And that's where you can really start getting results and impact in your supply chain and in your third-party risk management program, because you're not spending so much time trying to gather information and understand it. You're really getting closer to information that becomes actionable. The other part, though, and Nick, I appreciate the humility that you kind of expressed and placing this as a co-pilot, and assigning the confidence ratings with those, along with mappings to the evidence and so on, so that it really is a co-pilot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the only way that it works, Kelly. So you got to have trust on this. And then we're talking about sensitive information. These are high stakes assessments. So that's the way it has to be.
Yeah. Well, so, just going back to this framework, I think, we've talked about what's happening right down the middle. Let's just give you a preview. This might be a review for some of you on the intelligence side. But RiskRecon cybersecurity ratings and insights really are global scale intelligence, outside in, that answer a lot of the questions that we posed up front. But with intelligence, accuracy, super important. RiskRecon data is audited periodically for its accuracy. I think our last audit was 99.1% accuracy. Visibility and transparency. We don't hide any of the detailed information. We don't just leave you with some summaries, but we pull you all the way down to the information. It's risk prioritized within the context of issue severity, and also the value of the asset. Is it just a brochureware site, or is it actually a transaction site? Different things like that. Lots of workflow to support engagement with your suppliers on that. And we'll see some of that consolidating in our work in the roadmap with Whistic there. But then also the ability to tune your data, tune your RiskRecon assessments to match your risk appetite. Maybe you're really just concerned about a certain segment of risk, critical and high severity issues, and high and medium value assets that are transiting sensitive data and transactions, for example. And so, we're designed to be accurate and to make the information such that you're not overwhelmed with so much data, but you're really focused in on what matters. Where is risk, and how are they managing that risk? Are they managing it well or not? Let's go on to the next slide here, Nick, and I think we're going to just talk about a couple of use cases in a minute, but I'm not doing a live demo here because we want to give most of the time for the AI components. But this is what the dashboard looks like when you're looking at a specific supplier. You'd see a trend line, overall rating. Those dots on the trend line are their breach events. This happens to be a large health organizations in the UK area that's been in the news quite a bit. But we're looking at these organizations, continuously monitoring them across cybersecurity, hygiene, and risk practices such as software patching, application security, web encryption, network filtering. Are they operating unsafe network services, and so on? That's all based on the little screenshot to the right there. It's based on our ability to automatically find and attribute assets to the organization, and then what we observe about those systems based on publicly accessible and viewable network traffic and so on. You can see geographies, net blocks, systems, and so forth. Let's go on to the next here. When you click down into the intelligence data, each one of those domains I talked about, software patching, network filtering, encryption practices, things like that, are summarized for you. And then you can click into the detail. Here we're looking at network filtering, where we can see that this large organization in the UK has consistently had a poor poor practices around network filtering, lots of unsafe network services like MySQL, Postgres, RDP, things like that. So you can see how that level of information, not only the summary rating, hey, it kind of makes sense that they're getting an F rating and have for a long time, but also how this level of detail can really give you insight into what are their actual practices. Security documentation, worst case scenario, can be auto-generated. Policies, procedures can be auto-generated using generative AI, which is why audits and other things like that are important. But objective evidence is becoming even more important as the ability to just cheaply generate program artifacts accelerates. So really cool to be able to bring this level of detail into mashing that in with the Whistic, the RiskRecon Assessments platform to give you what they say, but also, hey, this is what they do. Let's go to the next slide here. Just a quick view of the dashboard. One of the ones I wanted to call out is in the matrix in the lower right. This portfolio has 33 suppliers or so. Actually, in the top right, that matrix where it says vendor priority matrix, you can organize your suppliers. Y-axis is their vendor criticality that you match to whatever. This is critical, high, medium, low, inherent risk. It could be whatever you want. And then you have the RiskRecon rating A through F. And you go back to that question, hey, which vendor should if I could only assess one vendor today, which one should it be? You look at that upper right where you have critical suppliers that are getting an F rating, and you can drill into those really quickly. So that information comes together within your risk program. Next slide. So we already talked about that. If I could only engage one vendor, which one? It would be that upper right based on the objective information. Next slide. Yeah. Monitoring performance and detecting incidents. RiskRecon is continuously hunting for information about organizations that have been breached. That's open web, deep web, dark web type of information. Breach events. We have indicators of compromise, unsafe network services information, critical software vulnerabilities, unauthorized hosting locations. You can look at those geographies. So it's really what's your exposure today and which parts do you care about? That objective data comes together in our portal to answer these questions. Hunting for dangerous conditions. In a dangerous condition, we get a lot of attention around PAN-OS or MOVE-IT or something like that, the latest type of thing that's moving fast across the internet. But criminals are operating off hunting from the back of the herd. And there's continuously, I'm surprised to see that there continue to be organizations with RDP on the internet, Windows NT, Magento 2.0, things that, they're not the flavor of the day celebrity exploit that's being talked about in the media. But it's been a condition that's lasted a long time. And you'd be surprised as we look at the data to find that, it's a good practice to be monitoring not only for that celebrity vulnerability, but can keep a continuous visibility and pressure around seeing where even historical critical vulnerabilities exist in your supply chain and staying on top of those and having a specific campaign and program to get those out of your supply chain. And I think, Nick, you demonstrated something in your platform where you can administer specific questionnaires like that around specific conditions. Is that right?
Yeah. And we're excited to integrate this capability from RiskRecon to help trigger that, even launching an assessment from RiskRecon to be able to do that more seamlessly between the two platforms as well.
Yeah. So RiskRecon has abilities for collaboration inside its own platform. But again, if you're signed on for the RiskRecon assessments powered by Whistic, you're going to see just a single platform in which you can do that engagement and collaboration with marrying together the attestation information along with the objective evidence. And again, you've got to triage and manage critical exposures, critical vulnerabilities. Without intelligence, you're really left to just send surveys out to all of your suppliers. Hey, do you have PanOS management interface on the internet? Hey, are you using MoveIt? Or is MoveIt being used in your supply chain? Or are you using Fortinet VPN? And when I was CISO at Zions, but at a large bank, back in the 2010s, that's exactly what we were doing. With the objective intelligence, you can narrow down, hey, I can actually see that this organization is using this thing that gives us indicators that they're using this. So I'm going to focus in on that subset. And I'm going to watch over time, what's my exposure to that? Has the supplier done anything about that? So we come back to this framework. I think, again, there's probably a couple more arrows. Like I said, that objective data, the ratings can inform which company should I assess today under that triage portfolio area. If you zoom out a little bit, pull in their historical assessments along with their current RiskRecon ratings and say, well, maybe my critical suppliers, these set of critical suppliers have good historical assessments. They're getting A ratings, no critical conditions in their environment. So rather than assess them every year, maybe I'm going to bump them out to every 18 months. But my high-risk suppliers, some of those who are showing poor ratings, maybe I'm going to increase the frequency of those, pull that in to assess them more, 6 months earlier than I would otherwise. And then in the conduct assessment side, Nick, you want to talk about that? Just kind of what's this happy state that where we're at with?
I think one way to summarize that is more seamless integration with the ratings and objective evidence and intelligence with the assessment process and the AI. That ultimately, how do we get out of this world where we're solely relying on a questionnaire? That's where this is all coming. Everybody's going to be using the AI capabilities moving forward. That's where the industry is going. So how do we adopt that moving forward?
Wow. Listen, let's stop talking about this stuff and let's get Nate. Why don't you pull across kind of our closeout? But let's get to these questions. I see 14 in the Q&A, and hopefully some of them are very similar. But let's get to those.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you both. And thank you everyone for your time and joining us. It's been a great session. And so there's been a lot of questions, as you've said, Kelly, relating to kind of both solutions. So why don't we start, Nick? I'm going to toss one your way because there's one that I think's a little bit easy. There was a number of questions that came through around specifically supported frameworks. And to be even more specific, around EU frameworks like NIS2, DORA, even GDPR. Can you touch quickly on some of those kind of more prevalent regulations and how that is supported?
Yeah, we support the ones you just mentioned, the European ones, all of those you just mentioned. So we're constantly monitoring what's going on out there. So when a DORA comes up, we've got a team that's dedicated to making sure that finds its way in the platform. We also receive customer feedback, and so we're constantly, every month or two, there's new frameworks issuing. So the ones you mentioned are in there already, and there's 50 plus other ones as well.
Great. Nick, another one to toss your way. Where are all the documents that are being reviewed by AI stored? Do you have them located in one spot? And do you have any confidentiality of the AI and how that is addressing those documents?
Definitely, and we would expect each of our customers leveraging this capability to ask questions like that. So we have a robust trust center with a lot of documentation around answering questions like this. How is our AI architected? I think generally speaking, we're a SaaS application. We run on AWS. These instances are segregated, but happy to talk more specifically about that question, in a one-on-one basis. And the RiskRecon team is actually enabled to help address that too. Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nick. Kelly, one for you. what capabilities does RiskRecon have to integrate with other supply chain tools and databases like external supplier IDs or own supplied goods assessments or a pen test database? What type of integration capabilities does the tool have?
Yeah, so that's founded on a robust API that allows you to, we support custom mapping. Different systems have different identifiers. And so we allow within that API to do that identifier mapping. And we have a process for, that, whether that's custom for yourself or something else like a DUNS number or something like that. We can tie those information sets together. We also have a number of partnerships where we have prefabbed integrations that we're very proud of. We're very glad to have a robust partner network where we have deep integrations with a lot of different platforms that pull it in not at only the data layer, but at the application layer as well. But again, we've built APIs to support what you said, because there's always something else that companies need to mash different sets of data together. And so you'll find that in the API, and that's something that our sales engineers can explain.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Nick, one more your way. Does the Whistic AI weight answers or data from SOC 2 reports or other provided attestation documents more than a vendor's policies or standards?
Great question. Not today. So we do not do that today. We want to get there though. So right now you have the transparency and you have the ability to sort of weight those yourselves as you see the source visibility. But we want to give our customers more flexibility into the documentation they leverage. So one of the first things you'll see come out early next year on this topic is the ability to specifically select or exclude documentation that you want to include in the vendor summary, as opposed to just whatever you have on the third party vendor. And then future item, we've already been talking about the question here at hand as well, but it doesn't do that today. It's a good question.
Well, Nick, and I think that one of the first things you demonstrated was that SOC 2 summary that helps you focus on that. So you do have you're in a pretty good spot today.
Yeah, for sure. It delivered a lot of value today. There's a very aggressive roadmap behind this, and I think everybody's going to be very excited about where this is going.
Yeah. So it looks like we have time for one last quick question, and I'll kind of just leave it for both of you here. But in terms of, they're asking, is RiskRecon Assessments licensed separately from RiskRecon, or how is it licensed, I guess?
Yeah, so they're just two different product SKUs, and if you want to license it, it's just you're talking with your RiskRecon or Mastercard account rep, and just tick the box on those, and it's really straightforward. It's all under one roof.
Awesome. Well, there were a few questions that we weren't able to get to with our time today, which is great. We love to see the interaction. We'll be sure to follow up with you individually. We have your information that will be able to get you the answers that you're looking for and get you connected to the right people. So with that, we'll wrap things up. We will share out this recording after the fact. If you want to provide it to your colleagues, feel free to do so. But thank you to Kelly and Nick for your time today. It was a very informative session. And thank you to our audience members and everyone who participated, especially. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're really grateful for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you all. Thanks, everyone.
Good. Thank you. Have a great day.